Hi, this is Alan Balmer, and I've been asked the question how I came to be involved in this energy, how I was connected to Mr. Trivedi. And it's an interesting story. Mr. Trivedi came to the United States probably around 2010. And at that time, I got a call from a mutual client saying that he was here looking for an accountant. And this client was taking Mr. Trivedi around the country. He was introducing himself, making some speeches, and I met him, and we connected for lunch one day, and since that time, I've been involved with the program ever since. In terms of my benefits, personal story from my side as to how this energy has impacted me, I don't think it's that much different than the experience I've heard from a lot of people. Initially there was like this feeling of rejuvenation, this wave of energy that I experienced, and it lasted for maybe 3 or 4 weeks. And I say lasted, but I'm talking about the rejuvenation. It was almost like this burst of energy that I could experience throughout my system. And then after that initial burst, I think, like most people, relativity starts to take hold and begins to, your system begins to acclimate to that. And at that point, I began looking at maybe the second phase of what this energy was, or more in detail as to what Mr. Trivedi was talking about. And that, in terms of listening to his teachings, I began to unwind a lot of preconceived ideas or conditioning that I had in general, and started listening to what he was saying, what he was actually talking about. Maybe from my side more in hopes of experiencing another wave or another burst of that energy or that rejuvenating feeling that I experienced from the first time. And the more I began to listen, the more I began to understand that what this program is more about is actual transformation. It's about actually regenerating and transforming my life into maybe something that was more involving more integrity, more caring, more integration of what I aspired for or aspired to be in my life. And it was actually something that really was more of a transformative nature. So, a very interesting point, for example, that Mr. Trivedi has talked about is that we're 99% spirit and 1% mind and body. And, when you think about that, that's just a different paradigm than most people live their life or go through life with that understanding. When you're working with 1% of something and you're trying to improve or change or get to a different level, putting your attention on that 1% doesn't really do that much for you. It's the 99% that is where the true growth and the true effect is going to take place. And if you focus on the fact that 99% of our totality is spirit, it might explain why this is a hard concept for a lot of people to grasp. A lot of people are struggling with understanding what is spirit or how we can implement this into our life. I mean, when we think about it, through our body, we run, we catch, we interact with life through our body. That's what our understanding is. That's what we're taught. We use our mind to think, to plan, to integrate, strategize things that we want to do. And for most people, that process of mind and body is, the extent of their learning. And now, like I say, through this kind of different paradigm, we're asked to consider our spirit and who we are, and we begin to start to work and integrate with that function in our life and understand that that is where true transformation takes place and where it begins. And what we begin to start to understand is how to live this, how to reflect with this, how to integrate with this into our lives, how to transition into that new paradigm that we're trying to transform our life to. Well, I can share some personal examples, some things that I've experienced and has happened to me. Years ago, I had damaged my knee. I had torn my knee cartilage, and I had a surgery on that, and the results weren't good. I wasn't pleased with the way the surgery worked out, and I had doubts as to whether I would ever go through another knee surgery like that again. And sure enough, I had that opportunity to reconsider that, because about 2 years ago, I tore my knee cartilage in the opposite knee. And I was determined this time to at least do everything I could to see if I couldn't rehabilitate it before going back and submitting myself through another surgery. And I had also had some insight that other people who were involved in this program had actually begun to regenerate their cartilage. And so I began to give myself energy transmissions, life force blessings. And what I found is from about a 6 or an 8 month period of staying off my knee, resting, and just taking these blessings, that my cartilage actually regenerated. I went back, I had my knee evaluated, I was told that there was no tear in my cartilage anymore, and I was able to resume activities that I wasn't able to do before I had the injury. Like, I was having trouble biking, I was having trouble hiking, I was having trouble just running in general. And since that time, since that 6 or 8 month period of rehabilitation, I've had no trouble with any of those things. Another area where I've noticed some improvement or personally had an experience is in sleep. I was having problems. I was finding myself waking up 3 or 4 times a night, sometimes having trouble getting back to sleep. And I think in the last, lately, I find myself sleeping the entire night. If I do wake up, it's usually 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. I'll wake up, maybe go to the bathroom, and then just go back to sleep. But I've found that my sleep has really changed. I feel like I'm a lot more rested. Again, I'm not having those times where I'm up in the middle of the night trying to get back to sleep. And the third area where I've had some improvement was I had a surfing accident and actually had broken 3 bones in my face, and I had a big gash from a surfboard. Also, I had a heavy impact to my face too during that time. And what I've noticed in the last year and a half since that accident is that there's actually almost a regeneration of the nerves and the tissue structure in my face. And I haven't completely experienced a total healing there, but I've noticed quite a transition, quite a difference from where I was till what I'm experiencing today. I think some of the biggest misconceptions about the energy are just really significant, a significant understanding as to what transformation is and how it impacts people in their lives. Misconceptions might be, that might be an accurate word to use, but to give you an example, I was in California a couple of weeks ago, and I had a chance to talk to about 10 farmers and just discuss with them a little bit about life force blessings and what it could do for them. One of the things about life force blessings that we've discovered is that there's been increased yields on crops and agriculture, increased growth in vegetable production and quality of product that has come from the blessings. What I was trying to do was just have some conversations with some of these farmers to get them engaged so that they might be willing or open to allow test cases on their land, on their production. So my suggestions to them was, would they be interested or open to having someone bless 20% of their yield and continue with a control group of maybe 80%, doing what they normally did. And I was, the only thing I was asking of them was to basically be alert, aware, or establish some sort of procedure where they would be willing to document or notice if there were any changes or shifts between the two test cases. And literally 9 out of 10 of the farmers weren't interested. They just kind of backed away, and when it came time to commit to doing something like that, they basically weren't comfortable doing that. And the thing or the takeaway that I got from this, or like you're saying, what are the misconceptions that people have, is that people have walls. They kind of have maybe a box or an environment that they live in, and they're not really interested in challenging that or going outside of that or thinking about the possibilities that could come from maybe something like this enhancing their production or their yield or whatever it is that they're trying to do. And so once people are willing to maybe accept a new paradigm or move beyond the life or the belief system that they have, I think at that point they might be open or willing to be touched and experience some of the benefits from this program. Right now, the only experiences that I've had with Life Force Blessings have been the ones that I've shared with you and the few experiences with my pets and people that are close to me. Right now, that's why I'm here. That's why I'm establishing a website, is I'm open to possibilities. I'm open to ideas. I'm open to anyone who's interested in working with this energy. And it includes work with people. It includes work with agriculture projects. It includes livestock and pets. Anything that someone might be having some issues with and might be interested in talking about or discussing. But right now, like I said, that's pretty much my emphasis, is to open this up and to see what possibilities exist right now. I've been involved in 3 scientific projects right now. One is ongoing. One was a study relating to vitamin D, and there was a group study that 7 healers got together in a specific group and were involved with, which was our first project that we undertook. So the value of something like this, the value of taking on a project like this was, basically to get out from the subjective claims that, this was great, this was helpful, but not really having a measure or an outside level of documentation to actually support what it is that I'm saying. And so by undergoing a peer-reviewed scientific study, we were able to actually take a control group and actually test that against a group of experiments that were actually undertaken involving life force blessings and compare the difference. And so through that process, we were able to take certain aspects of vitamin D impact in laboratory rats and actually bless the rats and discover, what was the case before and what was the case after. and there were certain tests involving, I think it was ALP and collagen, and bone mineralization was the third level that we tested, and compared the results between the three. And from the results, the group who did the test, the results were quite impressive. There was definitely a strong differential between the control group and the group of blessed products. It reinforced to me, and I think it would reinforce to anyone who took the time to look at those studies, the impact and the effect that this work actually does have on one's physiology. And then the last experience I had was with a pet, with a dog, my dog, who was diagnosed with basically an incurable disease which did not have a very good outlook. And so my wife and I began giving him blessings. And I'm going to give you a story about how he literally transformed and went from a condition which medically was considered an incurable condition to actually recovering 100%. So Chops is a 6-pound Chihuahua that has a history of respiratory problems. Most Chihuahuas are a little bit on the sensitive side, and you know, he's been to several vets over the years, and for the most part, he was misdiagnosed. I mean, people were saying he had allergies and various other afflictions. And it wasn't until last December that we actually got a clear idea of what was going on. And he was diagnosed with a symptom called tracheal collapse, which is, according to the American College of Veterinary Surgeons, it's a chronic, progressive, irreversible disease of the trachea. And what happens is the trachea, which is made out of cartilage, begins to start to disintegrate. And it actually begins to collapse. And like I said, by the time he was diagnosed with the problem, his actual windpipe had collapsed by about 40%. And the only thing we were told was that, you know, it was an irreversible disease. There was nothing that anybody could do about it. And, you know, the prognosis for most small dogs and cats who experience this is, you know, fortunately it happens usually later in their life, is that they die. You know, they end up being put to sleep or put down, literally because they can't breathe. When he was out taking his walks, I mean, he was literally gasping for air. When somebody picked him up around his diaphragm, he would have some sort of spasm, some sort of breathing problems. And you could see that he was definitely having this challenge. My wife and I decided, well, it was really one of the first times we actually started using the Life Force Energy blessings. We actually began to give him these blessings once in the morning and once in the afternoon. And we did this for about a month before we agreed we were going to go back and take him to the vet to see if there was any problems, any progress on what we were doing. Also at the same time, I found a couple of other people, a couple of other friends of ours who are involved in this program. And they agreed maybe for the last couple of days before we took him to for this 1-month checkup to start giving him blessings too. And what we found after the first month, the vet looked at him and, you know, it was kind of soon to tell, but they said, you know, they didn't see any more deterioration, and maybe his overall cartilage consistency had improved a little bit, but overall it was pretty soon to tell. So, you know, we thought to ourselves, well, we'll do this for another month and we'll take him back and check to see how he's doing. During that time, I found a total of 10 people to start administering these blessings. This is including my wife and I. And after the second month, we found that his overall cartilage consistency had improved to about 60%. And the level of actual collapse in his trachea had actually responded to, it had gone from about a 40% collapse to about a 30% collapse. So he had experienced quite a significant improvement during that 1-month period. We continued to do this. We took him back the next month, and it went from 60% to 90% improvement in his cartilage consistency, and the collapse went from 30% to less than 20. And by the fourth month, the cartilage overall consistency was about 98%, and his collapse was less than 10%, somewhere in the 8 to 9% range. So basically, as a whole, what happened was something that the the veterinary, I guess, medical profession said was impossible, said that there would never be any improvement in his cartilage, and that he experienced basically almost 100% recovery. It's been several months since we had the group blessing him, but we've continued just between the two of us, my wife and I, to give him blessings. And just a few days ago, I had the vet kind of look at him, and it appeared that his cartilage consistency was at about 100% now, and maybe there was like a 1 or 2% collapse that they could still tell a little bit in his trachea, but for the most part, he's made a full recovery from that what surely would have been a terminal diagnosis for him. Well, you know, in terms of life force blessings and your pet, from what I've learned in the last few months about tracheal collapse, there are several 100,000 small dogs and cats that are afflicted with this problem. And if you have a pet or know of anyone who's suffering from that problem, contact me at alanjbalmer.com on my website. You can find out more about the story that I just told, and you have a way to contact me and discuss whether or not we can provide a solution for you.